This video by Ben Shapiro is called Kamala's Anti-Masculinity Campaign is Backfiring. So this ought to be interesting considering the fact that Kamala Harris is leading in virtually all the polls, but somehow Kamala's campaign is still backfiring. I don't know how exactly that makes sense. Either way, the biggest soy boy, the least masculine man of them all, Ben Shapiro, is going to get up here and explain to us how Kamala Harris is attacking masculinity. We're not signing up for dailywire.com.
Folks, Kamala Harris has a problem. Blue-collar white dudes in the swing states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan are running scared from her campaign. Like Joe Biden running scared from Joe after realizing she's now milked him for everything he's worth.
No, I don't want you, I don't want you, I don't want you, I don't want you.
The Kamala campaign is countering by trotting out such masculine icons as Tim Walz.
Wait, what? Did he say Jill Biden running scared from Joe?
The weirdest goofball in America, a man with hands so floppy, he looks like Gumby come to life. Or like an inflatable tube man outside a used car dealership.
Yeah, then it's got to be pretty awkward then that the inflatable tube man outside of the car dealership is still running a better, more successful campaign than JD Vance. I mean, you can make these funny little comparisons all day, and they are kind of goofy, that's fine. But it doesn't take away from the fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are currently leading in the polls, and this isn't really an attack on anything about Tim Walz. So he's a little bit goofy, okay? Is Trump not goofy sometimes? What is the real reason here?
And don't forget the Manning mannerisms that make Pee Wee Herman look like the Dalai Lama. Oh yes, they're all...
Yeah, when Tim Walz is doing so many embarrassing things that you need to show the SNL reenactment rather than just showing Tim Walz doing something embarrassing. Bravo, Ben. Bravo. That's a new one even for you, pal.
Oh yes, they're also trotting out Doug Emhoff, the new paragon of masculinity, who, come to think of it, feels a lot like the old 1950s male stereotype that leftists love to envision. He reportedly hit on his secretary, smacked around his ex-girlfriend, knocked up his nanny, and paid for her abortion. He's basically the Don Draper of schmuck-looking attorneys, now masquerading as a submissive house sitter. So men aren't into the Kamala.
Okay, so it's true that Kamala Harris's husband, Doug, has done some pretty sketchy and fucked up things in the past. Nobody's denying this. What I am denying is nobody is claiming that Kamala Harris's husband is somehow the new icon of masculinity. Nobody is talking about this guy in the context of, oh, masculinity and this, that, and the other thing. Nobody's doing this. I don't understand. He like has to build a dichotomy in order for it to make sense for him.
And that's a problem, because it turns out that blue-collar white men in swing states are a heavy constituency. Fortunately for Kamala, she's come up with an amazing media strategy. Target everyone in the world except blue-collar white male voters. She started off this week with a podcast called All the Smoke, hosted by former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, two true political dynamos known for their expertise in complex international relations and knowledge of federal infrastructure issues.
Former fucking professional basketball players? That's pretty masculine. But now I guess we've moved away from the anti-masculine thing, and now we're just like, haha, they used to play basketball, so they don't know anything about policy. Before it was, nobody around Kamala is masculine. Now she's going on a podcast with a bunch of masculine guys, and you've completely moved the goalpost.
I'm joking, fucking idiots. For Barnes, if I mentioned every suspension and fine he received while on the court, I'd go bankrupt paying my staff overtime, so let's just focus on a few of my off-the-court favorites. In 2017, he pled guilty to fighting a woman and her boyfriend outside a New York nightclub. Then, just this year, he lost a TV analyst job after yelling at officials and confronting a student broadcaster at his...
What the absolute fuck does this have to do with Kamala Harris going on this podcast? Okay, so the guy's done some really fucked up things in the past. He's not really a very good person. Okay, what does this have to do with Kamala Harris? What does this have to do with Kamala Harris being anti-masculinity? And what does this even have to do with Kamala Harris going on this podcast? Not to mention, you're talking about masculinity, and then you pan over to the two NBA players that are very traditionally masculine men, and what do you know? They're simultaneously, or at least one of them is simultaneously accused of acting out violently against women, which is exactly the consequence of traditional masculine stereotypes. And when you try and ascribe to this archetype of masculinity, it comes out far too often as violence. This has actually been this is a proven fact now.
Sounds like he and Doug Emhoff could do a buddy comedy together.
I'm rolling.
And Steven Jackson, well, in addition to pleading guilty to felony charges in 2007 stemming from a strip club fight and firing his gun in the parking lot, maybe you remember a little something called Malice at the Palace.
He's absolutely out of his mind.
It's so funny to me that he literally has two examples of these guys that are traditionally masculine, and both those guys, in their pursuit of being traditionally masculine, have also been involved in multiple different instances of violence, domestic violence, abuse, etc. It's so ironic to me that Shapiro hasn't even made the connection.
Well, these are the kinds of amazing journalists Kamala chose to visit. Even they were wildly unimpressed.
Did you do a whole video then talking about how shitty Aiden Ross is? Because Trump went on Aiden Ross's podcast. Did you talk about how stupid Aiden Ross is and how dumb he is, how many controversies he's been involved in? No, of course not. But now when Kamala Harris goes on this one podcast, because the guys who host the podcast have done bad things in the past, that means Kamala Harris is bad somehow.
With her incredible intellect.
That's crazy.
Right?
Let's just get this straight. Kamala Harris is so awe-inspiringly stupid that a man who literally went into the stands at an NBA game and punched a fan in the face was like, bro, I can't do this. But that was only the beginning of Kamala's magical mystery media tour. Next, she appeared on a podcast.
I don't even know what he's talking about. You showed me a clip of him saying that's crazy. He's making so many gigantic leaps. It's insane.
On a podcast titled Call Her Daddy, which coincidentally is what Tim Walz says to himself before every public appearance with Kamala. The show is hosted by Gen Z influencer Alex Cooper, the leader of a fan base she has named the Daddy Gang. She's a good-looking lady who got famous for coining something called, this is actually for real, the Gluck Gluck 9000. The Gluck Gluck 9000 is apparently an oral technique she suggested to her fan base, which sounds like it would have gotten Kamala a position even more powerful than San Francisco District Attorney.
Kamala Harris, I wanted to have you here.
First and foremost, that's not funny. Acting as if a woman, because she's a woman, is in a successful position of power. She must have gotten there because she slept her way to the top is innately sexist. I think it's pretty clear as to why that is sexist as well. Assuming that women just don't have the qualifications, they only can use their sex appeal to get ahead. This is fucking ridiculous. Kamala Harris was actually involved in government for a very long time. She worked her way to the top. She never slept with anybody to get any kind of position. The one famous person she slept with was some guy who'd been separated from his wife for 10 plus years. Meanwhile, these dudes all want to vote for the fucking rapist Donald J. Trump. Regardless, Shapiro, your humor isn't funny. Let's go ahead and see what Kamala Harris is like on this podcast.
Kamala Harris, I wanted to have you here today to talk about your positions, not only in politics, but also in the bedroom.
You know what the strongest weapon a woman has in this world?
Wait, is this just a fake thing now? Why is he showing us a parody?
In any case, Cooper has since undergone a full brand overhaul. She signed deals with...
It's so funny to me that he's like, Kamala Harris is so cringy in all these shows, and then he's showing us parodies of the show. Show me the real show, you idiot. If it's so bad and embarrassing, why do you need to show me a parody of it? Surely the real thing would be bad enough.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, she welcomes A-list guests like Gwyneth Paltrow and John Mayer onto her show to spill the goods on their private sex lives. So, with this type of risque reputation and an episode out just last...
Again, we're just on... Because this podcast host previously has hosted some risque things, that means Kamala's bad for going on a podcast, even though that specific podcast that she was on had absolutely nothing to do with sex or anything inappropriate. You're just like, hey, you went on a show and this host isn't really that cool. How dare you?
What did Alex Cooper ask Kamala Harris that could be actually considered newsworthy or tantalizing? Well, nothing. I mean, she asked why Kamala is so awesome and also so special and also abortion.
Former President Trump recently told women, you will be protected and I will be your protector. What do you make of that?
I thought that she was going to ask her about, her sex life with Doug or something. But, who knows whether that exists. Anyway, there goes the media's sole opportunity to ask about Kamala's humble origin stories in San Francisco politics.
Help me make sense of all this. Kamala goes on a show that's usually inappropriate and sexual. When Kamala's there, she's asked a real question. Ben Shapiro's mad that Kamala Harris is going on a show that's usually very sexual and risque. But now he's mad that they didn't ask Kamala Harris a sexual question? If you're mad that the show is overly sexual and gross and whatever, then why are you complaining that the questions when it came to Kamala weren't sexual?
But old Howard has lost his sting and possibly the use of his prostate. His edginess has gone missing, just like Ellen Page. In the same studio where Stern once instructed stars to sit on sex machines, Don Blackface called people smelly N-words and joked that the Columbine shooters should have tried to have sex with their hot classmates before the attack. Stern asked Kamala about her favorite foods and whether Donald Trump was most like Hitler or like double Hitler.
Ben Shapiro's angry that this guy has been famously edgy / shock jock radio host, now talking to Kamala Harris. None of these are actual arguments. Literally none of them. They are all just, hey, Kamala Harris went on a show and the host has said edgy or yikesy things in the past. Okay?
She next went on The View. The roundtable, filled with screeching late 90s modems, did what they do best. Talk over each other, say awful things, kiss Democratic. But this time, to their credit, we did actually get one little soundbite of importance.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Kamala is so amazingly bad at this. She somehow threw up all over herself when she was asked an easy question by intellectual heavyweight Sonny Hostin. So again, she did.
I don't even know what to say right now. Like, this is just so many leaps and just like, oh, Kamala Harris said that Joe Biden did a good job because she's currently the vice president. Duh. Let me get really mad about this. Your word vomit is just getting so boring.
If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today.